Mathew Meets, a vlog with insight. Inside stories of Silent Valley with Professor V.K. Damodaran.
Mathew, so what I decided as the new president, of course in consultation with other senior leaders and the co-workers in KSSB, that first we should educate our own members about what this issue is and why we should actually intervene in this, because this requires that protecting this environmental niche requires a very special kind of effort. So you should get all your own members and activists in one line, in unison. You should actually get their thought. They should understand. That is one thing. And then we should actually take it to the people, because everybody should know what are the special issues in this. This is not just starting a project and running it and having some development to take place after 6 or 7 or 8 years if the project is completed in time. So like that. So our intention was to take it to the people.
So, in my understanding, initially the plan was lethargic and was hidden from the people. It was carried out in a secrecy. And how could you really reach out to the people where the government and all other establishments, even the conventional media, was trying to block all these legitimate claims of the environmentalists? Eventually, that had turned into a noisy debate internationally and especially in the region. Also, you could spread the message to many people and that gained public attention. But how was the process of reaching out to the people in such a great mobilization when some misinformation, in my research I could find that many misinformation was spreading out and exploring pseudo-scientific arguments against the movement was also spreading out. So how could you reach out to the people and clear out the confusion?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it is probably the answer to it is actually shifting from ecology, development, economics into what is called as communications.
Okay.
It's very interesting. We had almost a whole barricade in front of us because none of the conventional media, except as far as newspapers are concerned, all major high circulation newspapers, they won't even touch it with the farthest end of the pole. Okay, this is an issue not for them to carry to the people. Whereas Hindu, but at that time Hindu was not printed in Kerala. It used to come from Chennai, then Madras. Anyhow, they spent, or rather they spared some space for news and views on this. Then Indian Express also gave, even though not to that extent, fairly good support. In Malayalam, if I remember correct, it was Kerala Kaumudi, which is published from Trivandrum, which of course had a much lesser circulation when you take throughout Kerala than other leading Malayalam newspapers. Then there was again another small newspaper which is actually widely circulated only in Trichy, that is called Malayalam Express.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the Indian Express thing, but it is in the name Express, it is published from Malayalam. These people were the fairly, of course, there could be some other newspapers or the media which would have given us some support, but solid support we could actually get regularly from these people. But that was not enough to carry the message. So we had to actually go to the primitive approach, which we had tried earlier. For example, we had actually conducted during the emergency period, it was in 1975, 76 and all. That was actually emergency period in India. Our freedom were all kept frozen for some time. At that time, we thought that we should teach the public something about science, scientific temper, and what is our environment, etc. But Silent Valley has not started. This issue has not come. But generally, we thought that when science communication, what is after all science communication, science popularization? Some of these deeper understanding of science, whatever science it may be, not only physical sciences, but environmental sciences, technologies, everything. Public should know a little bit about those things.
You mean to inculcate the public on such
Yeah,
pedagogical
scientific temper.
Okay.
So we conducted what is called as a 1000 lecture scheme because we were not sure how many classes we can actually conduct in the rural areas, in schools, and town, small libraries, and such
sure.
other places. That is the audience that we can get. So, but when we planned the text of those 3 talks were there. I think it was nature, society, and science, something like that, 3 topics. And separate notes were prepared, and our own workers were actually trained to give such lectures and answer to questions of the public. And they were actually formed out. Whichever area they live around that, they will conduct some classes. Ultimately, when we counted, what we started as 1000 classes became 10,000 classes.
Oh,
It was actually a remarkable success. So from this we learned that if you directly talk to the people, they will listen. They will ask their doubts. And if you can clarify them in person, face to face, it is actually the highest acceptability. So when we had this problem of conventional media blocking our publicity, we thought, why not go back to that?
went into the crowd.
Yeah, yes, I'll tell you how. What we did is, at that time there were 32 educational, the Kerala is divided into 32 educational districts.
Okay.
Even though at that time I think we had 11 revenue districts, but 32 educational districts. So what we did is from every educational district, we called one Parishat member, and most of them were teachers, because they have the ability to learn little science-based things in a better way, and also communicate, because they are always teaching small children, so they have that ability to talk. So such people were actually called in for a 3-day, day and night live-in camp in a small dilapidated building where our KSSP office was in the Calicut town, almost opposite to the present Calicut railway station. So there day and night we slept with these 32 people, and before that KSSP appointed a committee of 5 members from 5 disciplines. Professor M.K. Prasad, who is actually the ecological shot was actually fired by him first. Then Dr. M.P. Parameswaran, who was actually a nuclear engineer with the BARC, who had now come as a social engineer and working with KSSP. Then third was myself. I am teaching as well as into some government jobs. Then the fourth person was an agricultural expert, Dr. K.N. Shyamasundaran Nair. At that time, I think he was in the planning board. He was an assistant professor or so in the agriculture university. Then a fifth person, an economics person, Dr. K.P. Kannan. At that time, I don't know whether he was already Dr. K.P. Kannan or K.P. Kannan, whatever it is. He was actually a research fellow in CDS, Center for Development Studies, with Dr. K.N. Raj, famous K.N. Raj was heading. And he was a young man who was interested in looking at some of these issues. We 5 of us actually studied this from our own expertise, and we brought out a document, first in Malayalam, then it was translated and published in English. In English, if you give the title, it was actually Silent Valley, a techno-economic and socio-political analysis or evaluation or something like that. I don't exactly remember it. But basically it is actually techno-economic and socio-political. That means it looks at technical aspects, economic aspect, social aspects, and also political aspects. So that report was actually well-studied one, with no unwanted things. And it had also one aspect that it gave the solutions. Because KSCB's point is that Kerala is in dire need of additional electricity. So unless you say, if you stop this project, we are not saying that you should stop it, but if you're protecting the environment, you may have to actually stop or reduce production. That means the loss in energy should be made up by other means. So we were actually proposing how you can actually get so much energy from other sources. That is one thing. Second thing, we also put as the first argument itself that KSSP is really worried about the development needs of Malabar. So because people of Malabar will think that this is actually a movement to jeopardize the development efforts coming in favor of Malabar. So we have to tell how your development needs could be met. So we gave what are the needs and how this is not going to fully meet that. So you will find that this was not a, just like the megawatt I said, this was not something negative. This was actually a positive look at the various angles of the problem. This document, very brief, that was the strength. And the classes which we conducted for these people were each one explaining his own part to the listeners. And day and night, they were actually asked, you are actually required to go back to your own area, and from your area, at least one man from each panchayat included in your educational district, you call some 20-30 people, and you give class like this to them. So they may ask many questions. Many things may be very, very evident for you as a teacher and a KSSP member, but they are actually raw people. So you should be ready to answer their questions. So you visualize what kind of questions can come from the farmer, from the bus conductor, or from the ordinary worker, or a school student, or from a housewife. So you anticipate those questions and ask us. We will try to give you the answers. And fully equipped, you go back, and within another 10 to 15 days, each one of you conduct in your own area a training for 20 or 30 people. So within 2 weeks after this camp, they conducted exactly as we suggested, clarified all the doubts of the people, and what is the end result? 30 by 30 is 900. Okay. Because in many places it exceeded 30. And so finally, for less than 1,000 panchayats at that time, we had around 1,000 people who can actually explain these things face to face to anybody, honestly. So this is how, with a very primitive communication technique, we could actually surpass or bypass the entire obstacles put before us by the media, the government, and the establishment. This was an eye-opener.
Indeed, indeed. So, in my understanding, what I can exactly point out is that you had emancipated the developmental worries of the people by making it clear that the economic, environmental, and energy related concepts and concerns can be pursued in a different line. This is not exactly of a great topic, even though silent valley get noisy. So, what was the extent or what was the proper outcome that you could reach out within all these moments? Though KSSP could penetrate into the people and that had eventually grabbed public attention, even international media and society was interested in this case. And how come all these could be accumulated to serve the purpose of the movement?
Yeah, this is actually a very important question again. That is probably what I would tell you, and I would also insist that you try to read some of this literature connected with this, because for your interest in economics, I would say that there are a lot of things that you can find. How even economics can be looked at from a different angle. I will also direct you to a book which was published in the 80s. That is when the World Bank internationally gave the first 65 major projects to different countries, including India. They found out that only 3 projects were could be rated as successful. Remaining all either totally failed or partially failed. So they appointed a committee of economists to find out where the failure has come. They said, according to economics, everything is fine, nothing is wrong. They said no. But then how did the project fail? So they appointed a committee of development experts, planning experts. They also went, everything has gone according to the plan. Nothing wrong. Everything is fine. So still, World Bank was not convinced because their money has actually gone useless in several countries in so much millions and billions of dollars. So they appointed a third committee of sociologists, asked them to find out. Those people decided to visit some of these failed as well as successful project sites, discuss with the people and so many others in their own sociological way. And their findings was really startling. You know what they found out? Wherever these 3 projects have actually succeeded, they were actually in consultation with the beneficiaries, local people. And wherever it failed, this consultation was totally lacking. So that is the thing. So for a project, this is exactly what KSSP also said. So this finding, which is almost around 800 pages or so, Oxford University Press has actually published this as a book under the title, Putting People First. And I think every economist and every development planner, I wouldn't say, to engineers I used to say that engineers should read it first because they are the people who implement several projects. It might have been designed faulty by the planners, but finally the blame comes on the engineer who is actually implementing it. So I used to say that all these 3 groups should read that book and find out where all these plans have actually failed. I think World Bank has actually mended their ways, and also many other institutions have actually later changed their methods. That again is a positive outcome of starting this humble, simple, noisy debate on a silent region, silent medium. Thank you, Matthew, for deciding to interact with me on this, because I have taken this from my memory and put it to you so that youngsters like you should actually think like this.
My pleasure, sir.
Bring in newer movements for the generations that come after you. Thank you.
In an empirical view, our society must look forward to have inclusion in every developmental process, and we must embrace the general public as the beneficiary should be inculcated about the benefits and short losses, along with having a holistic vision to the future, where all these instances point towards the short visioned efforts of a very enclosed bureaucratic element and the sluggish pace and policy formation of the government. So in this perspective, we are very much thankful to Professor V.K. Damodaran sir in giving us such great insights to move forward and to face challenges in the way which are definitely having solutions within themselves. We can reach into the people and have the solution right there. Great insight, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for your insights. This was just an enlightening thought. Thank you very much.
So the outcome of Silent Valley debate is not just saving the very precious Silent Valley evergreen tropical rainforest. It has been saved. That is one thing. But more than that, in the whole country at that time, development planning lacked consultation with the people, lacked coordinating the aspiration of the people into a project and expecting certain results so that people themselves could evaluate whether the project is a success, whether it is beneficial to them, and that way people will be with the project right from the inception of the idea or the concept to the completion and beyond. In all development projects, not only in this country, all over the world, uh, projects are actually formulated by experts, either economists, development experts, or engineers. I think these are the three major partners in building what we call the under quotation development. Different from that, we are actually involving the beneficiary and the local people as one of the most important stakeholders of any project whatsoever, whether it is a power project, whether it is an industrial project, or whether it is any other social benefit project. There people should be involved together. In fact, the whole communicating to the public, and in which of course number of other people, KSSP is only one of the elements, even among the scientists. Of course, there were scientists who tried to support the development lobby by telling a lot of misinformation and pseudoscience, etc. That's a different thing because we never bothered. If we have the right answer to give, people always accept that those things will be wiped out. But the main point there is that poets, writers, thinkers, artists, they were all involved in it. It should actually catch the imagination, especially of the youth of the state, not only in the state, outside the state as well as even outside the country. Many people actually expressed concern. And one major thing that happened in the country is that you will find that when the agitation or the debate started, we didn't have a separate department for environment. Later, a separate department for environment came. Previously, while projects were being approved by the Planning Commission and other agencies, they were actually having only a very cursory vetting on environmental impacts. There will be a paragraph saying that the flora and fauna in the area are actually studied. There are actually 33 species of such and such, 47 species of such and such, and none of them are going to be
Extinguished.
not extinguished, not even affected in a disadvantageous way. This will be the closing sentence. And the project approvers actually accept it. And project proponents always will gloss the whole thing by saying that without going deep into it. So this is then for the first time such analysis required not only for that such projects, energy projects and other things, but even for industrial projects. Because it was proved soon after the Silent Valley debate came, I think 1984, the Bhopal disaster came. How was that project approved without all the safety aims? Not even the local hospital did not know if any chemical that is actually present in that factory, if that leaks even for a small quantity, and even if one single person gets affected, what is actually the antidote? Could you wash your face with water or not? This was not known to anybody. Even the company management did not think about that one. So we find that with whatever has happened afterwards, we find that there is a lot of caution required, a lot of planning required, a lot of strategizing required for taking a project forward. So this lesson, back to the decision makers, ministers, executives, like the government secretaries and all who actually participate in approval or disapproval stage of many projects. They never used to look at these things from that angle. So that way, a modality, a procedure, and a methodology was actually got evolved officially, because they knew that these things cannot be neglected hereafter, because what we see as development is not the whole view, it is only the tip of the iceberg. Below there are a number of problems. So one should actually dive deep and see what is actually the size of the concealed or the hidden portion of the iceberg. So this is actually the greatest opening.
Yeah, really.
And so that way you find that on all development projects, not only in Kerala but in India, environment impact statements became very compulsory, and that should be done only by experts. Previously, anybody could write a few pages of listing of the species and this and all, but this is more than species and many other things. So a holistic ecological review was actually required subsequently for all projects and all activities where public interest, public health, and public welfare are involved. So this change in attitude of doing projects in the country made a lot of good for our country and also for many other developing countries who couldn't actually voice this kind of scientific strength in their own countries. This became a model. The case study of Silent Valley became a case study for, or rather a pre-study for any other project formulation. Whatever questions we raised were actually questions that are meaningful for everything. And also in this, one thing if I may say, in this, the even in the MG Cameron committee, which finally decided on the advisability on going forward with the project, they couldn't actually come to a conclusion. But the covering letter which Professor M.G.K. Menon attached to this report while sending it to Prime Minister, at that time Mrs. Indira Gandhi had actually come back to her, contained a suggestion which was actually a little favoring ecological restoration or ecological protection. That was little, but finally the political decision was taken. But what is to be examined was actually our questioning of some of the project elements, because like the voltage in the North Malabar is actually very poor now, and unless this project, which is the only one in the northern part of Kerala, all other things are in the central Kerala or south. All major projects, Idiki, Sabaragiri, and so many other things. So this argument we blasted by saying, at that time, 20 to 25% of electrical energy produced in Kerala was going as line losses, transmission, distribution losses. And around 40% was actually exported to neighboring states like Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Okay? And third point was only 40% roughly has been used by industries, not even 40%, of the remaining around 40%, only around 28-29% was actually used by large and small industries in Kerala. And many of these projects like aluminium projects and calcium carbide projects, they are actually where electricity is the raw material and the other natural things are only subsidiary things. Large quantity of electricity is used. So what you find is that with every kilo of that product going outside, because they are not all used in Kerala, so the lot of energy that is produced here with hard-earned planning commission approved allocation for Kerala being spent by Kerala, its benefit actually goes to outside people. Its profit doesn't come back. More than that, at that time we said, at that time electricity used to cost around 1.5 to 2 rupees on the average, 1 unit. That can actually produce, according to our economic and technical analysis, 10 rupee worth of wealth those days. Out of which 5 will go for the laborers as wages, remaining in various other parts. So we were actually taking, if 2 rupees worth of electricity is used within Kerala in industries and productive activities, may not be large industries, what you get is 5 rupees worth of employment is created. So more people get employment and our workers get the benefit.
Okay.
So the purpose of generating electricity and utilizing it productively creates employment and welfare to the people of Kerala. So you should actually utilize all the energy within Kerala. And in Silent Valley also, the 220 kV line from Silent Valley at that time was actually going to the Madurai substation, not to the Calicut substation. 220. So we blasted the whole thing by saying that it is, if electricity going from the same lines to Karnataka and beyond the northern borders of Kerala, street lights in those Karnataka villages could shine bright, and what is within Kasaragod and other places could only, Wayanadu and all, could only shine like a small, what you call, candle thing, or even worse than that, like what you call the fireflies. That was actually the extent of illumination you could get. The problem is not in this electricity, because the distance is passing Malabar.
Just that shine.
Yeah. Passing Malabar, it goes to Karnataka,
Oh.
and there it shines bright. Here is not. So there is something wrong with the system. So the whole project was conceived with a wrong concept. Why was this connected? And Kerala, nobody knew, because these were all in the beginning. You just mentioned about official secrecy. Even experts, I was actually an electrical inspector to government.
Oh.
Even I couldn't see this proposal.
I see.
I couldn't see what it is. You know how I got it? I was invited by Professor Madhav Gadgil, who was a member of the Government of India committee on the Government of India side. He was actually a professor of ecology in the Indian Institute of Science. There is a ECG Sudarshanan himself. They had a study center there. In that, on the ecology and environment is there. He is also advisor to Prime Minister for several successive governments. He invited me to his center as a visiting professor while I was teaching there in Calicut,
Okay.
and asked me to give a logic which is energy based, why this project is not very sound. So I sat there, and he had all these copies because he was advisor to the Prime Minister and Prime Minister's Ecological Committee and all. So he had all these things in his library. So I was given access to those things, and I pulled out all these things, project proposal drawings. Then I was actually shocked. From that I could find out that many fallacies in this project formulation, which generally does not get checked with the people or with the experts who are within the state. Not, they will discuss with their own engineers in electricity board, and irrigation people will discuss that in irrigation department, but not with other free thinking engineers, our senior and our experienced they are. So this used to be our official hierarchy of secrecy, and this exposure to me gave a lot of points, and in fact that was also utilized for my writings later. And when I continued with as the president for 2 years and later handed over the baton to Professor M.K. Prasad, all these things were actually discussed within KSSP and all the associating organizations, number of them, dozens of them, within Kerala and outside. So everybody could get a holistic view of these things and looking at any development problem from various related allied projects, problems and prospects. So this thinking and this practice probably is the best, and in which every discussion becomes people-centric.